Hi, hello, what's up? To begin, I would like to start with a quote from Jean Rousseau in the Discourse on the Origin of Inequality. It is thus with man also, as he becomes sociable and a slave, he grows weak, timid, and servile. His effeminate way of life totally enervates his strength and courage. Now, in the context of the reading, this is meant to depict how society strips people of their more basic strengths and abilities. You stop focusing on the self and you start focusing on the other. In this case, the other is society and collectivism. And Rousseau largely saw that as a bad thing because throughout time, society gives way to things like greed and envy and distrust. So obviously, he then saw society as something that promoted these very same ideas. Whether that's true to the fullest extent is obviously questionable, but it's a good foundation for the understanding of how I view things, which is why I wanted to start with it. To follow up, we then have Confucius in Analytics, Book 2, Part 7 to be exact, where it states, "Nowadays people think they are dutiful sons when they feed their parents, yet they also feed their dogs and horses. Unless there is respect, where is the difference?" And I think this is also important because the difference comes from what you think deserves respect, what you think deserves that recognition. And the quote itself implies that this form of power, parents, deserves this form of respect. It deserves this sort of value because it ascertained a authoritative role within an individual's life, such as society claims a authoritative role in how individuals as a collective may view the world around them and each other. And I think the basis that society is something that inherently has value on its own, like it's its own thing, is kind of dumb, and I don't agree with it. Society is a thing made up by people and the things people make. Therefore, people give society meaning, and saying society has intrinsic meaning without that is hard to get behind because it fundamentally goes against the idea that Rousseau states in his work that people have natural value and natural rights, and we like to keep those things. Society largely goes against that notion because we then claim that society is this thing that has rights and has its own will that it can extend upon things. That's not how it works. Society is still people. Like that's how it's made. That's how it works. And it may sound like, I don't know, as child's interpretation of society and philosophy, but this is the one I like to work with because frankly that's how things work. You can't have society without people, and society would largely fall apart if everyone decided, okay, we don't want to do this anymore. That being said, my personal understanding of all these things is very basic, like I said, very childlike. And I also think that because of this, the way I view things is much more simple. I don't try to overcomplicate, even though things like politics and philosophy are very complicated and they're almost impossible to really consider in any depth without some sort of deeper analysis and commentary to it. But I think for myself personally, it's the stripping back of these fundamental ideas that makes it much easier to understand what I think. And what I think is that we shouldn't place arbitrary value on things that don't have intrinsic value. Society does not have intrinsic value, and we shouldn't place more value on it because of that. I think it's fine as a vessel for humanity to exist under, a vessel for people to live within and to inhabit to their fullest extent, at least as full as the social contract will allow you. But I think deeper than that is when you start to get murky because society can't impose will on its own. It has none. It has no virtues, no ideals, no alliances. It's just an independent form for the most part. And people give it its shape, people give it its meaning, its identity. And I think we as a society, as a global society, need to focus on that to some extent because when you stop focusing on the people in your societies, then what's the point of your societies?